Hello, everybody. It's John Pollock and Wai Ting here on a Wednesday afternoon with news. How are you, Wai?
Doing good, yeah. Another Wednesday without Dynamite, but again, that does not stop the news, so here we are.
No, we have a lot to talk about. I thought, should we hold this over till Thursday? We all know there's just going to be that much more tomorrow, so let's it's like doing your chores each day. You don't want it just to mount up and then you have so much to do the next day. That's why you gotta do all your chores every day.
Exactly. Yeah. What?
It's like working out. It's like going to the gym, Wai.
Yeah.
Like, why put off tomorrow what could be done today?
Well, I mean, if only I could be more disciplined with that too. Maybe we can do a combination of, like, maybe we should just start doing the news on while we're each on treadmills or like an exercise bike or something, just to give me an excuse to work out on a regular basis.
That would be a gift for all of our listeners to hear us huffing and puffing through the demos.
Yeah. So, new King of Pro Wrestling.
I fell. I declined in my third hour rotation on the treadmill. My incline is not doing too well.
Yeah,
as I'm going.
You know what? I should
into my third quarter.
Yeah, my treadmill incline should be the same as the Raw viewership graph.
Yeah, by the third hour of our show, you'd be
just downhill. That'd be great.
Big fatigue in the third hour amongst the 18 to 49 Wai Ting John Pollock demo. Well, I don't think that could be a better segue. Which maybe we could ride segues into our first story, which is ratings, Wai. Ratings. How have we never thought of ratings?
And we still haven't, John. Let me cut you off right there. I don't think this is end that discussion right here.
You don't like it?
I don't think so.
Oh man, I think that's awesome. How have I never put that together? I put that one all on my shoulders.
Oh, great.
Ratings with Wai Ting.
Yeah.
Let's start off with Raw, and then we'll chat about Saturday Night Dynamite, because there's quite a lot to take from these numbers. Raw had its best week since the night after WrestleMania. 2,028,000 viewers, up 23% from the prior week, and a .67 in the 18 to 49 demo. This demo number, Wai, was so high. I must have cross-checked this 5 times to make sure this was right. To put that into comparison, they did a .48 last week, which is what they've been typically doing. So they were up almost 40% in their key demo. This was coming off of SummerSlam. It was the first Raw with the ThunderDome. And I think that there was also a lot of buzz from SummerSlam with the return of Roman Reigns that I think that would help the first hour. I can't give credit to that for the full show, because I think it was made very clear in the first segment that you want to see Roman Reigns, it's going to be on SmackDown Friday. But all of that, they were still going against the NBA. The third hour had the Republican convention that still did over 15 million viewers across all the networks. This is a great number for Raw. Their highest, as I mentioned, since early April, right after WrestleMania.
I think the double whammy of having SummerSlam, which a lot of people, despite I think tuning out, SummerSlam to me would be something that even a lapsed fan would be somewhat curious to see the results of, to catch up on. So I think a combination of that and maybe some good buzz coming out of SummerSlam as well, with some significant events coming out of it. Plus, of course, the very publicized introduction of the ThunderDome, which I would certainly plenty of people would have seen already on SmackDown, but
I think it was a factor.
I think a lot of people, probably didn't. If they're not used to watching wrestling on a Friday and Mondays are more their wrestling day, let's check out this new WWE structure that I've heard so much about. I think it's a combination of both those things. I also really do wonder, though, John, like how obvious it was that Roman wasn't going to be on this show for somebody who, again, might be a bit of a lapsed fan, doesn't necessarily realize that Roman might even be on SmackDown. Certainly, like, they never advertised any of appearance from him later on in the show. But I don't know. Maybe there was enough on this show to get people interested.
I definitely feel Reigns was a springboard for people to tune into Raw. I don't think people were just assuming SmackDown. I guess I just thought those ads were very effective of pushing that contract signing. But I mean, you may have had some people they tuned in and either they liked what they saw or they were sticking around for whatever reason, or they were really into this presentation. Like, as we said on Monday, this was a show, especially those first 2 hours. I think it worked out to be about 12 and a half minutes of actual wrestling time during those 2 hours. And it was quick matches, lots of out of the ring ideas, and it proved to be an effective tool this week. Now, a question I throw out to you. Dave Meltzer looked at the Google trends for SummerSlam, and they were somewhere around like 200,000, which he equates to not to a big WWE pay-per-view. It would be kind of a disappointing number for SummerSlam. Do you think that a lower interest level in SummerSlam in a weird way enhances the Raw because people are curious? They're not watching SummerSlam, but they are kind of interested in the fallout of a big pay-per-view. Do you think that plays any factor into this?
That's a really interesting theory. Yeah. We could be talking about a SummerSlam, which is, of course, there are bigger hurdles to watching something on a WWE network. You have to pay for the thing. You have to, maybe take your time out of doing something on a typical Sunday. Whereas on a Monday, I think despite, a lot of people not watching Raw as much these days, it's still kind of habitual to say, oh, Monday night, let me just flip on this channel. It's a lot easier to just dip in. And again, to get caught up on all the things you might have heard about about SummerSlam through Twitter, and more, maybe more specifically to see what this Thunderdome looks like.
So the breakdown was 2,140,000 in the first hour, 2,045,000 in hour 2, and then 1,900,000 in hour 3. All three of those hours, their highest respectively since that night after WrestleMania show. So do you think, Wade, that there is a bit of a wave that they can ride based off of this Thunderdome / other reasons of curiosity? Are you expecting like a big crash down to earth next week or somewhere in the middle?
I think they'll ride this for, at least another week, if not 2, maybe even the whole month. Payback, despite it being a smaller show, is something that I think might get a bit of curiosity, especially if there's something significant happening on it. I don't expect a title change, not a major title change at least. Maybe a tag title change. I don't think that'll really do that much, but nonetheless, I mean, there could be a significant event on that show to really like drive up interest. But much of the number this week to me is more of a curiosity thing, and it might be, I think overall, like, the Thunderdome is an improved presentation. It just feels a bit more grand, and it could result in, I think, slight uptick in permanent viewers, but I'm still of the belief that this is all really just a temporary solution.
I think so too. I wasn't expecting as big a number as this, especially given what else was on Monday night. But just to get a sample of some of these demo numbers, males 18 to 49 were up 40% this week for Raw. That's just a gigantic number for Raw standards. Adults 25 to 54 up 37%. Women 18 to 49 were up 39%. All demos were up double digits this week. However, in the third hour, we did see adults 18 to 34 drop 22% in that third hour. Women 12 to 34 dropped 20%. So the third hour, I mean, it had the Republican convention. It's the third hour. There's going to be a drop pretty much regardless. But I would say as the whole, this was a very strong week for WWE. And I think that the Thunderdome, I think that they certainly get at least another week's curiosity out of it. But I'm like you. I don't think this is the ultimate, change that is going to turn numbers around either. There is going to be a fleeting interest in this concept, but it's after SmackDown and Raw. I mean, it's hit two very solid, you could say, home runs when it comes to numbers of driving people to tune into programming, and the Thunderdome is a big reason.
We can definitely say that they've done a great job promoting the Thunderdome.
Yep.
And letting people feel like this is going to be a big, significant change, and we shall see if that's the case. So a week or two from now.
Now, that also comes with the negative publicity that the Thunderdome has brought to WWE, and that was after Monday's episode of Raw. And I'll fully admit, like I did, we noted the Chris Benoit image that made its way onto there, but it was only after the show that I heard about the other incidents that made its way onto the screens. One being what appeared to be a group in Klansman outfits waving a Confederate flag. There was also apparently an execution that aired on this. I mean, these are just, you would like to say shocking that this made its way onto there, but I think that you're doing this kind of technology, you're kind of opening yourself up to this. WWE did put out a statement. This was sent to Pro Wrestling Sheet. This abhorrent behavior does not reflect WWE's values, and we have zero tolerance for these unacceptable acts. We are working to ban those involved from future events, and per our policies, any inappropriate actions result in the removal from the live stream.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this is going to be a game for WWE because there are absolutely going to be copycats that are going to attempt this kind of stuff to mess with WWE. And it's just going to be like whether you limit the amount of people and try to monitor all of what these users are doing, like that's a pretty significant task in and of itself to be monitoring that over a 2 or 3 hour live broadcast.
Well, what is the aim? Excuse me. What is the aim of a troll on the internet, John?
To get this kind of attention and to create a news story.
Exactly. To create a reaction. And look at the reaction these people seem to have created, to the point where WWE has had to issue a response. All these news sites are picking up on it. Excuse me, everybody. So definitely something like this will encourage copycats. And I really do wonder, looking at these results, like how much foresight WWE would have had prior to this whole project. I mean, I think in theory it's a great idea. Yeah, we'll let the fans appear on camera. Everybody will be incredibly obedient. They'll show their hands, and it'll be just like it used to be. But as anybody who's ever run any sort of like internet chat room, message board, or anything of the sort, dealing with trolls is just a part of the internet. And when you have people coming into these rooms without paying, completely anonymously, without really as much as you could give a fake email, and that's really all you really need. There's no accountability whatsoever. It's not like you can really escort somebody out of this venue for and take away their rights to something that they paid for. There's nothing like that of the sort. There's no penalty whatsoever. People are going to use that anonymity to get the attention that they really deserve. So again, how do you police something like this when you're dealing with 1,000 accounts? I really don't know. Short of being able to request basically hiring these people to appear on camera, or even if you ask people to pay an amount, first of all, they would get some flack for doing that. But what would you say? Like, even if it was like a $10 entrance fee, you still get plenty of trolls.
But does that not open the discussion up? Like, there was a lot of backlash when AEW Heels launched because there was a financial commitment you have to make to enter this area that they were promoting as a place that female fans can come and it's a safe space. But it came with this is the reason. Like, when you don't put some kind of paywall above, you are welcoming, voices you cannot control, actions that you cannot necessarily police. That's the reality of things. And having a paywall for fans to get into this Thunderdome is an option that they probably are looking at. Like, there has to be some kind of further screening process, or at least a paper trail you leave so that your identity is attached to the screen. And if you are going to act out and put up a Klan rally onto your screen, it's going to be known that it's this person and this is their IP address. But again, you're getting into territory that I don't feel WWE was signing up for, to be playing internet police. They just want to create a broadcast and have an atmosphere towards it. But this is what they have inevitably signed up for, and this is what they have to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, that's what really makes this entire whole thing so interesting from a TV production standpoint is we've taken away live crowds. Okay, well, how do we do our best to use technology to try to replicate that? Let's try this. Okay, well, this poses this challenge. How do we fix that? Well, then let's try this. Okay, well, how do we fix that? Because this poses another problem. So every single week, it's just a constantly evolving thing. Everybody's trying new things, and everybody's having to fix problems. New Japan today was trying something different, which we'll talk about a bit later too. So every week is going to be a constant sort of retooling process, and I think WWE has stumbled onto something interesting here with the concept of the Thunderdome. Now it's about having these meetings to try to make amendments.
AEW Saturday Night Dynamite. They ended up doing 755,000 viewers, a .31 in the main demo. So compared to their last Wednesday show, they were only down 4.5% in viewers and 3% in the demo. They were fifth for the day on cable, trailing the NBA and the UFC prelims, which are UFC main card that aired on Saturday night. So they were neck and neck with the UFC. I've got to say, just looking at this and how well they ended up doing, especially with young males that followed this show, and they grew that young male audience. It was kind of the younger females. They were definitely down compared to their last Wednesday show. But as a whole, I think this was a real success for TNT and AEW to move to an unfamiliar night that is a much worse night to run on. They had significant competition, not the least of which was direct wrestling competition in the form of TakeOver. And you didn't even have a hard start time to promote, which has its good and its bad. You told people 6, but it was actually a half hour later. But that also comes with an extraordinary lead-in they had in the form of, I think it was 1.7 million viewers. And that definitely helped. Like the first quarter, Brandon Thurston has a rundown of the quarters, and that first quarter was huge. They ended up doing over 1 million viewers for the first 5 minutes of the show. So the idea of piggybacking AEW off the NBA, it's an interesting strategy. And I think this only would cement your commitment, if you are TNT, that we've got a very valuable property in AEW to be able to move it on a week's notice, really a week's notice on television, 10 days. And our audience found it on Saturday, and I thought this was a very good number.
Completely agreed. I think this just further proves the dedication and the loyalty of an AEW fan base, and I think the great goodwill that they built with their audience. I mean, since even before AEW's creation, really, the creation of AEW very much is they pride themselves on, I think, the voice of the people, just going back to Cody's speech at All Out, right? So this is an audience that not only is very much aware of these TV time slot changes, they're willing to take time out of their schedule to, accommodate. So certainly the NBA lead-in, I think, would have held. But, let's not forget that there was also another NBA game going on at the same time as Dynamite as well. So many of those fans might have actually tuned over to the other NBA game. But nonetheless, I would be very curious to know how many new fans would have watched this episode of Dynamite and how many people were simply, AEW fans anyway that just, made the time to watch on a Saturday. But, no matter how you really shake it, this is a great success for AEW. You've got, not just a weird time slot. You have an inconsistent start time. You have competition from NXT TakeOver. And yes, TakeOver is on a pay service. It's not as simple as flipping over to USA, but nonetheless, I mean, just speaking personally as a AEW viewer first and foremost, most weeks, I was more curious than the TakeOver because it is a takeover, and I no matter how big of an AEW loyalist somebody is, I do have to imagine TakeOver still acquires a great deal of interest. So was this a case of people giving priority to the TV show and then watching TakeOver on delay? I don't know, but nonetheless, it's I thought their ability to keep up this way, you really can't say it any other way. This was a great success.
This whole experiment on a Saturday night, the goal for me going in would have been just try to maintain whatever percentage of your audience you can. And dude, males 12 to 34 were up 47% on this Saturday compared to the last Wednesday episode of Dynamite. Like that is a huge stat that you're hitting young males to that degree, where it would say Saturday night is a better night for young males. Their biggest drop from the last Wednesday was women 18 to 49. That was down 27%. But I think that there's certainly a lot you can take from this number. And in a weird way, one of the most impressive stats was that adults over 50, the one that we always look at with AEW, the audience they're never going to top NXT with, adults over 50 were only down 4% on a Saturday night, meaning they're never going to get more in that category than NXT. But the ones that are watching AEW, they are going to adjust their habits and find this show. And I think that's a real that's a real notch in their favor. The fact that audience was willing to find this on a Saturday night and did not have some big drop.
I mean, yeah, they've got their own 50, like they're the 50 plus AEW loyalists, and then they're in the 50 plus. Yeah, I'm just imagining where do 50-year-olds hang out. I'm just thinking about like senior citizens in the seniors' home.
Well, Saturday night they did their gardening, they put together their computer, and then they were ready for some wrestling on Saturday night.
You know, at the retirement house, like everybody's watching NXT. Oh, like imagine like on Thursdays the arguments they might have about the demos. Yeah, typically it's like this is an NXT retirement home, okay? And then the outcasts are the ones watching AEW in the corner, like on their laptop.
Was it surprising to you that AEW on Saturday, they still won, aside from the coveted demo, adults over 50, they still beat NXT in every key demo, with NXT being unopposed on Wednesday?
That's quite amazing, and again, really tells you, like, at this point now, a year into the thing, you've kind of made up your mind about which product you're following. You know, if you're gonna watch NXT, you're gonna watch NXT, even if I guess has it been shown, like, has NXT moved nights yet? They haven't, right?
No, they've been on Wednesday every night.
So the Tuesday
every week
that's coming up will be, you know, a good test to see how many people follow NXT.
Yes.
But if you're AEW, I mean, it's at least shown this week that even if they move to a Saturday, you're going to follow AEW, which I think it was like so good that they decided to give a very substantial show on a Saturday. Despite it being a Saturday, they didn't phone the show in. They gave us a Brody Lee title switch, and the rest of the show being really high quality. So it tells anybody who decided to spend their time watching Saturday AEW on a Saturday on an off night that they spent their time wisely and they were rewarded for it. And it's that much more likely that somebody will tune in again on a different night.
In a way, it was a win-win for AEW. Like, they go on Saturday and they're way down. It's a different night. It's Saturday. You can't put too much stock into it. But instead, they put a lot onto that show. Did very well by the standards of which you had set going in, and they appear that much more valuable, I would say, if you're TNT looking at them, than they were even a week ago. A year from now, Wai, could you see any scenario where AEW and NXT are not head-to-head on Wednesday nights, or do you expect both to remain in these positions?
Very interesting, and I think, you know, this Tuesday, like, time slot for NXT will be an interesting experiment for them. I mean, even for, like, this Saturday for AEW, like, this is a great way to kind of test out what the limits of your audience may be, you know, switching nights. And I don't think AEW's at this point thinking about switching nights. You know, why would they? Like, Wednesday has been working out really well for them. I could potentially see NXT maybe wanting to switch, you know, to a Tuesday or something like that, if they do see significantly better ratings. But then again, the whole point of this thing has been to try to limit AEW's audience. And that'll be another, you know, interesting data collection point too. How will AEW do unopposed? What is their ceiling? You know, are we talking about a number of hardcores that are going to be watching no matter what, and it's not going to grow significantly? Or are we going to see that much bigger of a boost for AEW?
Tonight's episode of NXT, last week we talked about NXT kind of going into their unopposed week, where it felt like the same show you would have expected any other week. But tonight, they have really loaded up this show. We've got Karrion Kross and Scarlett opening up the show. And then they've added 2 title matches, Marcel Bartel and Fabian Eichner against Breezango. Coming up, Breezango's win on Saturday for the tag titles. Santos Escobar versus Isaiah Swerve Scott for the Cruiserweight title. Io Shirai and Rhea Ripley against Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez. The return of Tommaso Ciampa. And we're going to get the former Wade Barrett. Stu Bennett will be on commentary tonight. I'm looking forward to this show tonight. I think it's a really solid lineup. We're going to see if they get their post takeover bump and running unopposed. Like, this feels like a pretty stacked lineup for NXT.
I think coming off of a takeover, coming off of a title change, should result in a pretty big thing for or good results for them. I'm definitely most excited about seeing Wade Barrett return. He's been great on commentary on NWA Power, and I look forward to seeing how he might fit into this whole NXT thing. I think he'll sound good. Unfortunately, this is I'm assuming just a bit of a tryout for him. But,
probably.
I don't know what it means for Nigel.
I was surprised that you would think Nigel would be the first call. I was surprised by that because that was my thought.
Yeah,
and that's not a knock. Stu Bennett's very good, but Nigel is already, to me, that was his position, and you would think that once, if they needed someone, he would be the guy, unless they just felt this is a 1-week thing, and why bring Nigel back for 1 week? We would rather, when it's something permanent, you could revisit that. I don't know.
As far as you know, Nigel's U.S. based right now?
Oh, yeah. He lives in California. Yeah. Unless he's moved, but that's where he had been based.
Yeah. So, if that's the case, it does surprise me.
Let's finish off talking about New Japan because they held their card today at Korakuen Hall, featuring the 4 stipulation matches to establish the Fatal 4-Way for Saturday's show at Jingu Stadium. Both of us have had a chance to watch these matches and see the stipulations put into practice. Started off with Satoshi Kojima and El Desperado with finishing maneuvers banned. And I thought these two had actually a very good match. It was one of Kojima's better singles matches he's had in recent memory. And they really tried to tease it with Kojima at one point swinging the arm and nailing Desperado's arm and got warned by Marty Asami. And Desperado's using all of his arsenal, the Guitarra de Angel and the Numero Dos. But Kojima got out of those. He hit a brainbuster Koji cutter off of the turnbuckle. And then Desperado yanks Marty Asami down. And behind the referee's back, he goes for the Pinche Loco, which is stopped. He delivers a pair of lariats. Kojima won't go down, but he gets so angry, he stops Desperado on the 3rd attempt with the dreaded lariat. And Marty Asami disqualifies Kojima at 14 minutes, 14 seconds. I guess just to establish this whole concept, I wasn't crazy about the finish, but I did think they had a pretty good match, more than I expected the two to have.
I was pleasantly surprised, and I think what something like this tells me is that if you have good wrestlers doing ridiculous gimmicks, they're in the end they're still good wrestlers, and the content of the match was fine. And in fact, I found myself probably more engaged in this than I would have if it was just a straight up match between these two, because of the unique circumstance of the banning of the finishers. I was really curious to see how they would tease it to showcase the limitations of the stipulations to the audience, and I thought they did that relatively successfully. The finish had to have something to do with the finish, right, or with the stipulation, right? And I thought it made Kojima look definitely silly, but it was done in a way that I think was still kind of made him look tough. Okay, this guy stopped giving a shit because he hated this guy so much. He's just gonna use the lariat anyway. So I thought overall it was clever, and I found it entertaining and engaging.
The next match was Toru Yano and Bushi in a match where it was a 2-count pinfall stipulation. So this match I thought really worked. They did not overstay their welcome. It went 4:46, and it was kind of like the old spy versus spy concept where each was just trying to outmaneuver the other guy with roll-ups, and the buckle got exposed. Both ended up getting run into it, and it was a fun pace with these 1-count kickouts. Bushi hit this dive to the floor and then tied up Yano's legs with athletic tape, rolled him in, hit the seated drop kick, and goes to the Mahastral cradle, which Yano reverses, cradling Bushi for the 2 count. I thought this was a lot of fun. I thought that this was the stipulation that definitely worked.
This is a title that I think is custom made for somebody like Toru Yano, who, in all of his matches, his task is to try to think of a creative way to, make people laugh, or just, come up with ways of creating creative finishes. And doing something like this, I think, only helps like somebody with, a character like his. And I agree with you. The pace of like these 1 counts made things definitely, more interesting. And the finish, if it would have been a problem if this went like 15 minutes, but it was a short sketch, essentially, like a brief comic strip, like you mentioned, John, with Spy versus Spy, and ultimately just like gave you a pretty satisfying result, I thought.
Sho and Sonata had their submission match, went 19 minutes, 38 seconds. The story of the match was Sho working on the arm with constantly going to the Kimura, catching Sonata, and then Sonata would attack the knee of Sho. And this went on for a prolonged period. Sho utilized a lot of offense, some of them counters, using his knees, and really sold the effect that they had on the knees, that he was protecting himself, but in the process, re-injuring the knee as this continued onward. In the end, Sonata locked on a figure 4. Sho tried to reverse it, but it was immediately rolled back over by Sonata, and Sho finally had the tap at 1938. I thought the match was good. I didn't think it necessarily got into the level of great or anything like that. What did you feel about this match? It was the one that got the most amount of time on the show.
It was like the sort of like the meat of, I would say, like the 4 matches here. For anybody who feels really slighted by New Japan doing this type of thing, here they presented, about as like no nonsense of a stipulation as I think you can get. If anything, like this made things a bit more serious, having a pure wrestling submission only style of match that you didn't even get a chance to vote on. They didn't even leave that up to choice. We're not like giving you the option of fucking this up. This is going to be a submission match, and it's going to be there for the hardcores. And there aren't going to be any shenanigans, and there really weren't. So as a submission match, I mean, I think both of these two are just wonderful to watch together, with their great like athleticism and great chemistry and great ability to just flow. And beyond, I think, great chain wrestling, you got to see a lot more of that. Sho Tanaka Fire fighting from behind as the underdog, fantastic selling throughout. Much of the spotlight on him at the end of this match, and I think deservedly so. He plays a great underdog.
And then the main event, the one everyone's been waiting for, the handicap match with Kazuchika Okada versus Yujiro, Geto, and Jado. And the goal of this match was to make you think for a nanosecond that Kazuchika Okada was in danger of not defeating these 3 men. So they brought in weapons. Okada was constantly going for the Cobra Clutch that he's been utilizing throughout this return. And he stops Geto and Jado, then goes back to the hold on Yujiro. They eventually had control of Okada. They did a triple team powerbomb off of the turnbuckle, stomped him down. Jado hit a splash off the top rope, the most impressive maneuver the man's hit in years. Geto tried to use the brass knuckles, but they were stopped when he was hit with an uppercut, and Okada just fired at Jado with a drop kick as he was holding the kendo stick. Big drop kick delivered to Yujiro, and then a somersault dive onto the floor. The Geto clutch gets a near fall. That was the closest the trinity of villains had in this particular match. And then Okada made his comeback. Tombstone, Cobra Clutch, submitting Geto at 15 minutes and 27 seconds. This was a match.
If the goal was to get you to buy into like at least one near fall, I think they were about as successful as they could have possibly been with that Geto clutch at the end. But beyond that, I actually felt this was probably the weakest of the 4 matches. I think what this was successful in doing was dress up an otherwise probably even worse Kazuchika Okada Yujiro Takahashi rematch that I would have had zero interest in. I'm sure it would have been worse than this. But the result of this, Did not feel main event worthy, and despite Okada being the one to supposedly come up with this stipulation, this whole concept, I think it was the most disappointing match of the 4.
Yeah, I didn't get into this match at all. Really didn't do it for me, especially in a main event position. But that does set up the 4-way. So it will be Okada, Sonata, El Desperado, and Toru Yano to decide the King of Pro Wrestling, I guess, crown holder coming out of Saturday's show.
The other thing that was unique about the show was New Japan trying their
That's right.
remote cheer sound system. And I believe this is the app thing that we've seen like screenshots of in the past, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so fans had the ability to press buttons for various crowd noises. And this was in Korakuen Hall. So what did you think of it, John?
I didn't think it really added a lot. I thought it was somewhat reminiscent of what we've been seeing from WWE. I think it's really hard to master the art of artificial noise in a wrestling context. I don't think it added a whole lot to me, but they're trying. Everyone's trying. I don't think anyone's mastered it in the pro wrestling realm yet.
We are definitely like in the like caveman stages of trying to create like artificial noise in a live setting. And I think this was they're experiments, and they're really saying as much. I think like having some noise in the background does add to the atmosphere a little bit, but it's really weird. It's still really weird. It's like, seeing real people in the background, but hearing like robots try to replicate human emotion, which is really strange. But I could see them like continuing to toy with it and tinker with it. Is it better than having silence? To some people, yeah. I think it will. They will say that.
Yeah, I think it's kind of the lesser of two evils is what we're dealing with when it comes to the atmosphere. I'm very curious to see how Saturday sounds in a much larger environment and what the setup looks like at Jingu Stadium.
That's right. Yeah. So that's this Saturday.
That is this Saturday. They have 6 matches announced. They're doing another Korakuen Hall show on Thursday, which is just loaded up with tags to, I guess, just get us into Saturday. Another note is I expect on Saturday we'll probably get the field for the G1 announced, you would think.
Yeah, absolutely. You would think so. If not right afterwards, during a press conference or something. But
yeah.
So sorry. In that King of Pro Wrestling match, we got Okada, Yano,
Sonata, and Desperado.
And that's just a 4-way, no other stipulation.
The stipulation is that it's the fatal 4-way. Yeah.
Okay.
One other note before we get on out of here, I just want to send well wishes to a broadcaster, Justin Morissette, out in Vancouver. He works with Sportsnet 650. He hosts the Wrestle Central show. And a week ago, I heard from Justin, and he had done this interview with David Arquette and wasn't able to run it on his show. And he had kind of asked me, like, if I could transcribe this, write it up, would you be interested in running it? And I said, absolutely. And then this news occurred this past weekend, and this has been national news in Canada, that in his area where he lived, there was a pair of preachers who were essentially using a speaker system out in the street and using a lot of anti-gay rhetoric. And Justin confronted these people, and it ended up with Justin getting his leg broken. And this has become a really big story in Canada. If you want to look this up, there's been a GoFundMe set up for him. Regardless, he did send me this completed interview. So we're going to be posting that later this week. But I did want to mention ahead of time, just wishing our best to Justin going through a recovery period. It was sounds like a really nasty broken leg. And this has been a very big story, especially out in Vancouver, about what went on here, and that he was trying to stop these people from, preaching in the middle of the street some hateful speech, and it resulted in a terrible injury for him.
That's crazy. Wow.
So anyway, hope that Justin does better and is recovering. So that's going to wrap up our show. We're going to be back on Thursday night with Rewinded Dynamite, chatting about AEW and what they have for their live show, which will feature 10% capacity from tickets that they have sold to the public. And tonight, Braden and Davey will be back with Up Next to go through NXT's post-takeover edition of the show and all the directions that they are heading in beyond tonight. So those are the shows that are coming up. And then we've got a live Rewind to SmackDown Friday night at 10:15 Eastern for members of the Cafe. And then lots of shows this weekend, including a bonus Cruel Summer edition with WH Park and Stephanie Chase. We'll have a show after the New Japan card at Jingu Stadium with Wai and I on the Cafe feed. And then Sunday night is Payback. It's pay-per-view time yet again.
Yeah, just a week later. Full card to come, I suppose, on after Friday.
That's right. So that is all that is coming up. PostWrestling.com is where you can check out all of the news, and we'll speak with you on Thursday night.